Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to read Elegy. So before reading Elegy, we study about it. Elegy, the concept of elegy came from ancient Greek poetry, and it was an occasional lyric. Like it was written on the occasion of death to express sadness, melancholy, remorse, and lament. And after it we can connect it with the philosophy because it tells us the philosophy of life and death, meditation and contemplation. We can see that elegy always end on an optimistic note. There was some hope and some optimistic note in the end of the poem. So in Greek and Roman times, elegy denoted any poem written in elegiac meter, alternating hexameter and pentameter lines. The term was also used, however, to refer to the subject matter of change or loss, frequently expressed in the elegiac verse, especially in complaints about love. In accordance with the later uses, the wanderer, the seafarer, and the other poem in Old English on transience of all worldly things are even now called elegies. So we can see that elegy is written in elegiac meter, like which was alternating hexameter and pentameter. And elegy is a sad song, is a death poem. We can see some example that the wanderer, the seafarer, and some old English poems. In Europe and England, the world continued to have a variable application through the Renaissance. John Donne's elegies, written in the late 16th and early 17th century, and are love poems, although they relate to the sense of elegy as lament in that many of them emphasizes mutability and loss. In 17th century, the term elegy began to be limited to its most common present uses, a formal and sustainable lament in verse for death of a particular person, usually ending in consolation. Examples are the medieval poem Pearl and Chaucer's Book of Duchess Elegy in the mode of dream allegory, Lord Tennyson in Memoriam 1850, and W.H. Audens in Memory of W.B. Yeats 1940. So we can see that in England and in Europe, we can see that the trend of elegy came and it ends to Renaissance. We can see John Donne's elegies, which was written in late 16th to early 17th century, which emphasizes on mutability and loss. We can see another poems which are ending on the consolation, like medieval poems like Pearl and Chaucer Book of Duchess. And we can see Lord Tennyson's In Memoriam by Alfred W.H. Audson in Memory of W.B. Yeats 1940. So these are some example of the elegies which end on in a consolation. Occasionally the term is used in its order and broader sense for sober meditation on morality, such as Thomas Gray's Elegy written in the Country Churchyard 1757, and the Elegy 1912 to 22 of German poet Rainer Maria Rilke on the Renaissance, both of poets and of earthly objects they write poems about. So here are some examples: Thomas Gray's Elegy written in the Country Churchyard, and some German poets, in which elegy we can see that objects which are poets and of earthly object they write poem about. So it was transience of both poets and the earthly things which they talk about. So here are some famous books like Chaucer's Book of Duchess, and very famous elegy is Thomas Gray's. Elegy written in the Country Churchyard. So it was a very famous elegy and very important also. The next term in this we came to know that it is dirge. Dirge is also very versified expression of grief on the occasion of a particular person's death, but differs from elegy. It differs from the elegy in that it is short, is less formal, and usually represented as a text to be sung. Example are Shakespeare's Full Fathom 5, Thy Father Lies, and William Collins' A Song from Shakespeare's Cymbeline 1949. So, this is basically a song which was sung on the death of somebody, and it was a very short text which was supposed to be sung after the funeral or in the funeral after a person's death to express the grief on that occasion. So it was those. Some example is the Shakespeare's Fathom 5, Thy Father Lies, and William Collins' A Song from Shakespeare's Cymbeline 1949. So here are some examples like Shakespeare's book and William Collins also. After the new term came is threnody. Threnody is now used mainly as an equivalent for dirge, and monody for an elegy or dirge, which is presented as the utterance of a single person. तो थ्रेनोडी जो है वो इक्वलेंट है डर्ज के लिए. जैसे डर्ज किसी ओकेजन पे जो उसकी डेथ है उसके ऊपर ग्रीफ एक्सप्रेस करने के लिए जो है एक सॉन्ग जो है संग किया जाता है वो थ्रेनोडी है. वो इक्विवेलेंट है डर्ज के साथ में. मोनोडी ऐसे कि मतलब एक सिंगल पर्सन की जो है वहाँ पे अटरेंस दिखाई जाती है. सो दैट वाज मोनोडी. जॉन मिल्टन डिस्क्राइब्स हिज लाइसिडस 1638 in a subtitle as Monody, in which the authors bewail a learned friend, and Martha and Roll called his elegy on H.Abrams thrice a monody 1866. So John Milton also called his poem Lycidas a monody because we have seen that monody is a single person utterance. So John Milton has also called Lycidas as a monody. After it, a new term came. Here is a pastoral elegy, and pastoral is very important. And if we know about the pastoral elegy, that pastoral elegy setting is always in the countryside. It always show a village side view. So an important subtype is the pastoral elegy, which represent both poet and the one he mourns, who is usually also a poet. As a shepherd, the Latin word for shepherd is pastor. This poetic form was originated by the Sicilian Greek poets. Theocratics was continued by the Roman Virgils, was developed in various European countries during the Renaissance, and remained current in English poetry through 19th century. So pastoral elegy is in which the poet represents some another person's death, and the character of pastoral elegy is always a shepherd. The shepherd was the main character of this elegy, and if we see that it was originated by the Sicilian Greek poet Theocratics, and it was continued by Roman Virgils to Renaissance European countries during the Renaissance. Notable English pastoral elegy are Spenser Astrophale on the death of Sir Philip Sidney 1595, Milton's Lycidas 1638, Shelley's Adonais 1821, and Victorian age Arnold thrices. So here are some examples of pastoral elegy like Spenser Astrophale, which was written on the death of Sir Philip Sidney 1595, and Milton's Lycidas 1638, Shelley's Adonais 1821, and Victorian age Arnold's thrices. So these are such very famous examples of pastoral elegy which we all have to learn. The pastoral elegies from the Greek through the Renaissance developed a set of elaborated conventions which are illustrated here by reference to Lycidas, in addition to the fictional representation of both mourners and subject as shepherds tending their flocks, line 23 to 36, and elsewhere. We often find the following conventional feature. So here are some feature of elegy, that how are the some main points or character of this elegy. So first we can see that there was a invocation of the muse. The main first character is invoking the muse. Another, we can see that nature joins in mourning the Sappho's death. So next main characteristic is nature is joining that Sappho's mourning on the Sappho's death. So nature is also used in that elegy. So first we have the lyric speaker begins by invoking the muse and goes on to make frequent references to other figures from classical mythology. Second is all nature joins in mourning the Sappho's death. Critics who stress the mythic and ritual origins of poetic genres claim that this feature is a survival from primitive laments for the death of Thames, Adonis, or other vegetational deities who died in autumn to be reborn in spring. Third main character is a mourner charged with negligence and nymphs or other guardians of death shepherd. So here is some anger was shown on the death of that why he is dead. So the first main is that here is the invocation of muse. Second is the nature joins the death of mourning on the shepherd death. Third is there is some negligence, some anger on the death of the person. Next is that there is procession of appropriate mourners. So it was important that if anyone is died there should be his procession. एक जो है जनाजा निकलता है जिसके अंदर जैसे हम देखते हैं लेके जाते हैं उनको, तो वो रास्ते पे पूरा राम नाम सत्य ऐसे, तो एक प्रोसेशन वहाँ पे निकलता है उसके ऊपर और पीछे उसके बहुत सारे जो है मॉर्नर्स होते हैं. The poet raises question about the justice of fate or elsewhere of providence and adverse to the corrupt condition of his own times. Such passages, through sometimes called digressions, are integral to the evolution of the mourner thought in Lycidas. Post-Renaissance elegies often include an elaborate passage in which appropriate flowers are brought to the Yes, there is a closing consolation in Christian elegies. The lyric reversal from grief and despair to joy and assurance typically occurs when the elegist came to realize that death in this world is the entry to the higher life. So here are some that the poet is asking about justice for fate, providence and correct conditions of his own time, and he is also talking about post-Renaissance elegies in which we have seen that there are used flowers for this conveying their tribute, and after it we can see that closing consolation is also used in Christian elegy. The lyric reversal from Greek and despair to joy and assurance. So in Christian elegies we have seen that the poem starts with the grief or sadness of some death and it ends on a very good note by an optimistic or joyful note. So these are some characteristics of the elegies. Next we have in his Life of Milton 1779, Samuel Johnson, who disapproved both of pastoralism and mythological in modern poetry, decried Lycidas for its inherent improbability. But in the elegies by Milton and other major poets, the ancient rituals provide a structural frame on which they play a variation with originality and power. Some of the pastoral convention, although adapted to an industrial age and non-Christian worldview, survive. Still in Walt's Whiteman's elegy on Lincoln's When Lycidas in the dooryard bloomed 1866. So there was also some elegies like Samuel Johnson on the life of Milton. He is saying he has disapproved both pastoralism and mythological in modern poetry. He is saying that if he is a modern poet, so he should have to stop using the old mythological and pastoral element in his poem. But in the Lycidas we see that there was very much pastoral and very much old elements. So he is saying that if he is writing in the modern sense, so why he is using that mythological and pastoralism. So Samuel Johnson is disapproving both pastoralism and mythological. Some of pastoral convention also, like in the industrialist and non-Christian worldview, like Walt Whitman's elegy on Lincoln, when lies lost in the dooryards bloomed, 1866. And if we see in this poem, there was no mention of Lincoln. In this poem we only see that how is poet feeling after the death of Lincoln. Only poet feelings are expressed in it. In the last 2 decades of 20th century, there was a strong revival of elegies, especially in America, to mourn the devastation and death wrought by AIDS among talented young intellectuals, poet and artists. See Michael Calland, Poets for Life, 76 poet respond to AIDS 1989. So in the last 2 decades of 20th century, there was strong revival of elegy, especially in America, because there was very much death or occurred by AIDS, and many poets and intellectuals died by AIDS. Now some books are given here, like C. Convention and Pastoral on Elegy referred to T.P. Harrison, J.R. and H.J. Leon eds. The Pastoral Elegy and Anthology 1939, Peter Sachs, The English Elegy Studies in Genre from Spencer to Yeats 1985, on Lycidas, C.A. Patriarchs, Milton's Lycidas, The Tradition and Poem, which includes a number of recent critical essays and Scott, etc. So these are some books, some elegies written. So the topic of elegy is completed here. I hope you are liking this video, and if there is any mistake in it, you can correct me in the comment section. You can comment and also motivate me to make new videos, and also tell me that what new thing I should do in this. Stay tuned for another video. Thank you for watching the video, and please subscribe the channel.